we change the air conditioner, we put a lot of exhaust. We've taken some care. We are ready to use it, but still we are not using it actually because our online programs are equally popular than offline. Now we have re-equipped our office to integrate online versus offline. So we have put some multiple cameras, multiple system now. Hey, you are on air,
Also
Sheikh.
the live streaming, sir.
You must tell me. I keep talking.
No, no, sir. Just now, sir.
You put
Just
it on
now.
air.
No, sir.
You're on air.
Ambi, shall we start? 1 or 2 minutes we'll take
Yes.
so that the people who log in, there's quite a number of them waiting in the queue so they can join. Okay, we'll go ahead.
Yeah.
We are on air now.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed my privilege to welcome you to another evening edition of Talk, which has been you'll be eagerly looking forward. I know you look forward for all MMA events, but today's event you must be looking forward more because one of your favorite speakers is going to speak with some wonderful panelists on a subject which each one of us go through in our life. So before I call upon distinguished speakers and also talk about the book and launch of the book, let me briefly tell you, because I see quite a number of people on the queue at the gate, so that I don't want any one of them to miss the opening, the over of the entire match today. So let me briefly tell you what's happening in MMA in the next 2-3 minutes, so that if you have missed it in your inbox, you don't miss this lovely event actually. Now we have a event on the 17th of this month. That is the Science of Mind Management by Swami Mukundananda. He's a Jagadguru Kripalu Yoga of USA. You know, Swami Mukundananda is an outstanding author. He's a Swamiji. He's from IIT Madras and done his IIM from Ahmedabad. Then he's become Swamiji, doing extremely well, and he's got his own Kripalu Yoga at USA. And an excellent speaker, very humorous. So not to miss. And he's talking something which is relevant today. That is the Science of Mind Management. Then on 21st of November, again, we have a very, very interesting event of Ponce veterans. Entrepreneurial management versus professional management, and promoter-led companies versus professionally led companies. We got, again, two outstanding thought leaders talking. One is Anand Kripalu. You all know him. Anand Kripalu is managing director and CEO of Diageo, and also Raghavendra Ravi, consultant coach and mentor, Mr. Balraman. So we got an interesting team of people who will be joining us this evening. So please do block your diary. This is a not to be missed event. Then 24th, we have a event on IP rights, and on 25th, again, interesting event, marketing through social media and how to start scale up faster, how to start up can scale up the faster. This is basically this is being organized by MMA Women Managers Council, and we have got 3 outstanding speakers. We got a CEO of Kriti Singh, a CEO of a very successful startup. She's going to be in conversation with Anusha Shetty, is a founder CEO of she was a founder CEO of Autumn, now is a Grey, and also Kritika Balasubramaniam is a Stopper Shop Communication. This is happening on 28th. Though it's organized by the Women Council, it's open to everybody because you must understand how to use social media and how startups can scale up faster to use social media. Then on the 30th of November, again, we have an interesting topic. We have been waiting for this to happen, the election of president at the US, and the subject what you are going to discuss is Biden presidency trajectory upward for India, question mark. So we have again outstanding panelists who will be discussing this because we really want to know what's happening post. We have a very difficult changeover in USA, and it's not all that interesting. There's so many places got impacted. So we are all worried how it's going to, though the stock market is going really very high, thinking that everything is going to be normal. But let's see what is going to happen. We got outstanding panelists, Mr. M.K. Narayanan, former National Security Advisor and former Governor of West Bengal, and also Nirupama Rao, former Foreign Secretary, and she also former ambassador to USA and China. Then we got Dr. Anant Nageshwaran. He is a non-permanent member of Economic Advisory Council Prime Minister. We are also getting 1 or 2 of external diplomat who will be joining us. So this is happening. So I now stop with this till 30th September. This is what the program. If you missed it in your inbox, please do. These are all the programs which are very, very interesting for you. Listen to some of the people from officers mode, they call it, so you'll know what exactly happened in different field which we are going to discuss. Coming to today's talk is, as I mentioned to you, Ambi, dear friend of mine. Besides that, when Ambi talks or Ambi speaks anything, we all walk miles to listen to him because he's so humorous. His talk, it's so much sensible, and he talks, and it really makes you understand. Since I'm indeed proud and privileged because Ambi is my childhood friend, and he's doing so well and doing something interesting that makes us, is icing on the cake for me and my MMA team to really host him this evening. Hosting another book of his, which is going to be launched. Spring Bounce Back from Rejection, and it's authored by Ambi. And we are again have a very, very distinguished panelists who are joining us for a discussion. And along with Ambi, that is Nandini Dias, the CEO of Lodestar Media, and Vinay Kamath doesn't need introduction to MMA audience. Vinay is a senior associate editor of Indo Business Line. You all know Indo Business Line is always our media partner for all of our major events. They have been a great source of support to us. So we have been having association for the last 30 years with Indo Business Line for all our activities. Now, the format of the program for this evening is we'll have a quick launch of the book. Thereafter, Ambi will speak about the book, and thereafter interaction from the moderator, Vinay Kamath will be interacting with both our guest speakers. Then there'll be a Q&A session. As usual, if you have any questions, please do send it to the chat box, or as usual, you're getting the numbers in your YouTube, Facebook, which is running there. So that numbers, you can send your question and my team will compile and will be put across to the distinguished speakers to answer to your, attend to your, they will be answering all your questions. So look forward to a great evening today. And let me have the privilege of today's launch of the book, that is Spring Bouncing Back from Rejection. Let's have the privilege to launch this book. It's a formal launch of the book, and thanks Ambi, many congratulations, and may now request to showcase your books in your hand so that everybody knows the book, what you are having. And I request other panelists also do so. I also do that. Yes.
This is the other way around.
Yeah.
Am I getting it right?
Okay.
You're getting it ulta, Nandini.
Mine is the other way around.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Once again, many congratulations, Ambi. Another great book and so interesting read. And before I request you read, when I read, I didn't complete the book, but it's so interesting. And many times you really resonate or connect with your own thing, what happened. I know rejection must have happened in everybody's life. And reading this book, you really recollect and see how well you have done for yourself. And the people who are not going to be facing this, it's really a clue for them that never get discouraged with what rejection is a stepping stone for your success. Now, over to you, Ambi. We want you to share, and let me have the privilege of introducing Ambi. And Ambi is a brand manager, Ambi Parmeshwaran, brand strategist coach, founder of Brand Building. We have shared this detailed profile along with the invite, and has handled assignments, marketing, and sales, and he has helped build numerous brands, and he was the president of advertising agency for association. And besides that, what is not there in the book, I must tell him, Ambi is a great supporter of MMA. He's been a part of MMA committee. He helps us a lot, actually, advises on how to take a brand. And he also helped us by bringing high profile when he was in Draft World Cup to do some 5-day excellent course on brand. So that has made really our brand MMA to a next level, and that has really made us to take it the entire management concept of MMA to MMA very good. Thank you so much, Ambi, for your support. Over to Ambi. And before I hand over to Ambi, may I also introduce other panelists so that you can continue without any break in the flow. Can I have the yes? We have the other distinguished panelists for this evening is Ms. Nandini Dias. She's CEO of Lodestar Media. And Nandini Rai is currently the Chief Executive Officer and managed over 175 clients, including Samsung, Johnson & Johnson, some of the best brands in the country, not only in the country, the world, Amul. And Lodestar is a media agency, and they also here titled number of times biggest Indian award show like Go Fest and much more. And she is also a media planner. She was also awarded the agency CEO of the Year award. She's a long-serving jury member of the number of other events, including Cannes and Spikes Festival, many more. And then also ranked consistently among the most influential media person, woman achiever. Something which is not mentioned, she's also an outstanding badminton player, represented state while playing badminton. I always found a good sportsman always do very well in their profession. I think one example is Nandini Dias. And may I have the profile of Kamath, Vinay Kamath, dear friend of ours, very close to MMA. He's senior associate editor of Indo Business Line. And Vinay is, prior to joining Business Line, he did a stint in television, TV18, worked with the Financial Express, Business World, Times of India Group, and Economic Times, recipient of number of awards, and also is also the author of best-selling business book, The Titan, Inside India's Most Successful Consumer Brand. We had the privilege of launching this book too in MMA, where Bhaskar Bhatt had come, and it's very, very interesting to read. If you have missed it, better to get to know that the best inside story of one of the Tata's most favored companies. Now over to you, Ambi, to take it forward, and we are all eagerly listening, looking forward to hear your views on some of the interesting topic which you're going to be talking to us. Over to you, Ambi.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, for inviting me once again to your wonderful association. I remember our relationship goes back to when you were my senior and you were the role model. My father used to point out to me about how your commitment, dedication, and then the fact that you wanted to become a pilot, and you became a pilot and you joined the Air Force and had a phenomenally distinguished career in the Air Force. And it was delightful to find you back in Chennai with MMA. Thank you for inviting me here and for all the various events we've done together. So with the permission of Vinay Kamath, who's moderating the session, I would like to share a short presentation. So Vinay,
Sure.
okay?
Sure,
Vinay,
go ahead.
yeah.
You want to share the screen? Yeah, good.
Okay, so thank you for inviting me here. This is about, we have about an hour and a half to cover. So for about 30 minutes, I will take you through a glimpse of the book. And I have done this many times. And this is, I think, the 15th or the 16th talk I'm giving. But this is going to be curated for Chennai audience. This is curated for an MMA audience. So there's going to be something special here, which I have not said in any of my previous talks. So with that in mind, let me start by saying, what is a spring? Spring, as those of you who are engineers here, and I can see some of my old engineering friends joining the Zoom call here, is a twisted piece of metal that can be pushed, pulled, turned. It can be pushed, pulled, turned, but it always returns to its original shape. That's the beauty of the spring. So spring is the name of my new book. It's about bouncing back from rejection. Every rejection, in a sense, pulls us, pushes us, drags us in different direction. But if we have a strong internal spring, we can always bounce back into our original shape. So the question I want to ask is, how good is your internal spring? How can you make your internal spring that much stronger, that much more agile? Okay. And how do you face rejection? What happens to you when you face rejection? And the book contains 60 different stories drawn from various people, some whom I met, some whom I talked to, some whom I read about, and some are from my own life. So the about 60 stories, maybe 6 or 7 are from my life. The balance are from people around me. Okay, and they are grouped in 3 broad sections: facing rejection, processing rejection, and learning from rejection. Now you may ask, who is this guy to write about rejection? Now, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a counselor. So let me clarify how this book came about, what gave me the idea of writing this book, and why I think I'm not too badly qualified to write this book. So I was giving a talk in Jaipur, it was Jagran Lake City. Yeah, thank you, Vinay. Jagran Lake City in Bhopal. And I was talking about my book, Leadership Lessons I Learned from My Clients. It was a book called Sponge, which I wrote a little over 2.5 years ago. And there was a girl at the back of the audience who kept putting up her hand. And finally, the mic, in all these events, live events, the mic takes time to go to the back of the audience. So finally, it reached there. And she stood up and said, look, sir, you had a great career. You met a lot of very interesting people, and you written a nice book. You had good education, but we are all young here. We are going out to face the world. We are very worried, that we will get rejected. We'll face rejection. What do you know about rejection? What can you tell us about rejection? So it kind of rang a bell in my head, because people tend to think that, okay, this guy is, been a CEO, etc., and probably has not faced any rejection. And that's why he's had a very merry run. It's been a smooth road for him. So I kind of extempore, I gave almost a 10-minute talk on the rejections I had faced. And what I learned from those rejections and how I managed to overcome those rejections. And I realized, before I could finish my 10-minute talk, there was a standing ovation. I mean, the fact is I gave a 1-hour talk on my book, which got a nice applause. But this 10-minute talk on rejection got a standing ovation, which kind of opened up my eyes saying, oh, wow, what's happening here? Is it that young people are today so worried about rejection? So this kind of stayed with me. And then in November, I was in IIM Calcutta accepting an award they were giving me. And in the acceptance speech, I added that bit on rejection. And, the IIM crowd is very different from, say, Jagran Lake City crowd. And they're very, very cynical, skeptical about anything, any advice. But even there, I got a phenomenal response to my rejection story. That kind of sank in. I said, look, maybe there is something I need to write about rejection. And I started thinking. And then I realized that, I put in 35 plus years in my working career in marketing, a long stint in advertising. And those of you in marketing and advertising will know that being rejected is like par for course. You get rejected, if not once a day, definitely 2-3 times a week, you're going to face rejection. And then over the last 5 years, I've been a mentor, coach, I've been an executive coach, and I've seen my coachees, my mentee companies facing rejection. So I've seen rejection both myself as well as I've seen people face rejection, manage rejection. I said, look, this is a nice mix. I can put all this together. And then I interviewed 20-30 people, including, retired bureaucrats, Olympians, authors, startup entrepreneurs, academicians, directors of institutes. And I put all that together to develop this potpourri of 60 different stories arranged in 3 different books. So what I'm going to do is, let me just tell you that you can face any rejection if you understand how to go through the 3 steps. The 3 steps are, first, be positive. When you hit by a rejection, be positive. But always be ready to face the rejection, right? So be ready to face the rejection. You may not have a plan B in upfront, but you've got to have a plan B at the back, right? So there has to be a plan B and a plan C at the back. So one is, how do we face rejection? Do we crumble, collapse, or are we kind of equanimous about the rejection? So that is one. How do we face rejection? Second is, when we are hit by rejection, how are we processing it? How we, easy thing to say is, I didn't get the job because the interviewer was biased against me. I had short hair, or I have long hair. I have a big nose. The interviewer didn't like me because, I was so much taller than the interviewer, or I was so much shorter. It's easy to blame the other guy. So second step is process the rejection. Maybe there is something wrong with you that you need to correct. So that is the second step. The third is, once you've been rejected, you need to learn from every rejection. If you don't learn from every rejection, it is a missed opportunity, which is not going to come back, which means you're going to keep repeating the same mistake again and again and again. So what I'm going to do over the next 20-25 minutes is to take you through some of these stories from my own life, from the lives of other people whom we greatly admire and respect. So let me start with the first set of stories, which are about facing rejection. So this is a story going back to my own life. I was at IIT Madras, I think March 1977. I was a chemical engineer, BTech student. And as some of my friends who logged in here will confirm, I was, let's say, an average student. I just about managed to get, I think, a 7.4 kind of a CGPA. And I was also not, unlike some of my friends who are very clear, they want to go abroad to do PhD, etc. I was not very clear what I wanted to do. So March, I went to the placement office, finding out, if there are any companies coming for placement. And young people here probably will find it very difficult to understand that in 1977, there were no crowd of companies coming for placement, right? On an odd day, you may get 1 company, maybe 2 companies, but that's it. There was no crowd. There was no big demand for these IIT engineers. So I noticed there was a thing that, notice board, Hindustan Lever was coming for an interview. So I prepared my CV and I gave it to the placement office and I appeared for the interview. As they say, I was bowled in the first ball, right? The first or the second question I was asked, I did not know the answer. It was actually a very, very simple question. And I went back to my room. I discovered in my book on chemical unit operations. This question, which was asked by the interview, was there in page 5. So, that's my level of knowledge. So anyway, that was a disaster, right? So I said, look, maybe this is not going to work out. But fortunately, by then I'd written my CAT exam and I got an interview call from all the IIMs, and I managed to get into IIM Calcutta. So I joined IIM Cal, and I quite enjoyed the program. So first year, actually, I did pretty well. My friends from IIT would find it difficult to believe, but I came at the top of my class in IIM Calcutta. And cut to March 1978. Again, Mr. Hindustan Lever is coming to interview students for summer internship. So again, I got nicely dressed. I prepared my CV, went for the summer internship interview. And I was pretty confident that I'll do well because, I was a good student. So out of 50 students, first round, second round, third round, I got shortlisted. And I was the last two people to be interviewed. So I was very confident I'll get it. And I walked in, and the interviewer, posed a very funny, tricky question to me, which I took as a very serious question, and I gave a kind of a logical answer. And if you read the book, the full story is there with all the gory details. And the person who was called after me gave a very smart answer, and he got the internship. I didn't get the internship. And I said, look, what's going on here? Why am I chasing after these kind of internships? It's not as if I will not get a job at the end of the 2-year program. I'll get a job. So let me think of what I want to do during the next, 2-3 months. And I figured out that I want to spend time in Kolkata. I want to spend time in Calcutta, soaking in the culture, soaking in everything about Calcutta. Because, IIM Calcutta, for those of you who know, is in Joka, which is really outside the city. So I said, I want to spend time. And I went and I found a little notice board saying that there's a new advertising agency called Rediffusion coming for summer internship. And they want someone to be based in Kolkata. I said, great. I applied. I think I was the only guy who applied. And I got the summer internship. I met Ajit Balakrishnan and Subhash Chakravarti for the first time in 1978. And I did a summer internship in Kolkata. I really enjoyed what I did. And it opened up my eyes. It opened my eyes to about what was advertising, how the advertising world was changing with the entry of MBAs into various agencies. And Rediffusion was an advertising agency founded by MBAs from IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Calcutta. And I really enjoyed my 2.5-3 month stint, and I kept in touch with them. And cut to March 1979, I got a call from Subhash Chakravarti saying, are you free Sunday evening? Let's meet for a drink. I go to the Kenilworth bar. We spent 3 hours talking about advertising, about marketing, the role of advertising, the role of branding. At the end, he says, what do you plan to do? I said, look, I think some companies are coming in the next 2 days. I plan to apply, probably join marketing. What do you have in mind? So Subhash said, how about advertising? So I said, are you making an offer? He said, yes. So I said, then I'm on. Mind you, we have not discussed pay package. We have not discussed anything. I shook his hand. I said, done. Subhash, I'm joining Rediffusion. We'll catch up whenever. And I go back to the campus. I tell my friends, look, guys, I'm joining advertising. Those were the days with nothing like a placement offer and all that. So they said, are you mad? You're an engineer. You're a topper. You're joining an unknown advertising agency. Are you crazy? I said, no, yeah. I've decided, this is what I want to do. Then my friend who was a placement secretary said, look, you better get an offer letter from them. I said, why? They'll give it to me later. No. You've been shortlisted by Hindustan Lever. You have to appear for an interview tomorrow. So I said, I'm not appearing. They said, yeah, if you don't appear, Hindustan Lever will get very upset with us because they've shortlisted you. And they're the first company to come to campus. They'll ask, what happened to this guy? So I said, tell them I've been placed. They said, no, we can't say that. We need to have proof that you've been placed. I said, okay. And then, those are the days before internet, before email, before mobile phone, of course, was not there. And through the old dial system, I called Rediffusion office and I said, look, I need to get a letter from you. So they managed to send their peon with the letter. He arrived at 12 noon. And at 1 o'clock, I was out of placement and I didn't appear for Hindustan Lever interview. Now, my path in Hindustan Lever is kind of crossed several times. So I will end today's talk with a second part of that story. So let me just say that when you get hit by a rejection, you can sit and mope, or you can say, let me explore a new direction. And there's one more story I'll tell you later about exploring new direction. That's the first story I want to tell. The second one is about this person. Now, I don't need to introduce him to this audience. This is the Carnatic maestro, Sangeeta Kalanidhi, Sanjay Subramaniam. Now, what has Sanjay Subramaniam got to do with spring and got to bouncing back from rejection? So let me narrate this story. And this was a concert which happened in Mumbai at the St. Andrews Auditorium on Saturday, the 28th of October, 2017. My wife and I, we don't miss Sanjay Subramaniam whenever he comes to Bombay. And whenever in December, normally we are there in Chennai to attend at least 2-3 of his concerts. He's outstanding. And for those of you who know, his concerts go totally full. I mean, the January 1st concert, you can't get tickets, you know, even 2 weeks ahead, you can't get tickets, right? It's impossible to get, right? Now, imagine, he was supposed to be performing at 6:30. It was a double-decker concert. He was supposed to be performing at 6:30. We had gone for the 5 o'clock performance of the Sarod Maestro. The hall was empty. And we thought when Sanjay comes, the hall will get filled up. But no, the hall was not even 1/3 full. Right? It was really sparse crowd. And we were really upset. I mean, how can you, this is like an insult. How can you do this to Sanjay? So I went up to one of the organizers and said, look, you know, this is very sad. You know, what happened? I mean, he's a maestro performing and you got virtually an empty auditorium. You know, you better go and tell him. Because this is, you know, he should not take it amiss. He should not say, I'll not come to Mumbai again. So they said, no. We've told him. We told him there's been a problem. There's been a mix-up. You know, there's been confusion. So the hall is not very full. So we truly apologize. His answer to them was something which blew my mind. Apparently, he told them, listen, you called me. I've come to perform. Right? Even if the audience, there's only 5 people in the audience, I will sing for them. And he came and he gave an amazingly electrifying performance. It was a 3-hour concert. And interestingly, in the audience was a very famous critique called Shanta Gokhale. Now, Shanta Gokhale wrote a piece in the Mumbai Mirror on November 4th. And I want to read this to you. It's her quote. It's not mine. I've just reproduced it. Okay. It came in the Mumbai Mirror. Attending on Saturday, I heard young Sarodis Abhishek Borkar play with deep involvement, but to a sadly sparse audience. The numbers increased for Sanjay Subramaniam, who followed, but only to some extent. It was shocking that this part of Mumbai, the concert was held in St. Andrews, could not muster enough people to even half fill the hall for one of the leading stars of Carnatic music. I do not exaggerate when I say that Sanjay Subramaniam, recently awarded the prestigious title of Sangeeta Kalanidhi, was like one of those giant fireworks packed with gunpowder and tube of metal salts and oxides that burst into the sky and sent down showers of stars in breathtaking display of light, color, and form. He sang for a full 3 hours and had practical considerations not intervened, could have gone on longer given the freshness of musical ideas that kept pouring out. I mean, it was an amazing review, you know. The lesson I learned from this is that, you know, if you're committed to your profession, the audience doesn't matter. You know, very often we in business, you know, are told we have to go meet the CEO, but when you walk into the conference room, the CEO is missing, right? And you get very upset. Why is the CEO not there? But the truth is, never get upset if the audience is small. Never get upset if the audience is not whom you wanted. Never get upset if the audience is the wrong person. You never know. You may again have Shanta Gokhale in the audience who will end up writing a phenomenal review for you in the next week's newspaper. So be mature, and don't get upset. Okay, that's a lesson from Sanjay Subramaniam. From Sanjay, we go to authors, and some of you will know that famous authors have faced multiple rejections. Let me read out a few names, and there are many more names in my book. Jeffrey Archer, author of Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, rejected 16 times. J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter fame, rejected 12 times. Jack Cranfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul, rejected 144 times. Amish Tripathi, rejected too many times. Right? Walt Disney rejected, Seinfeld rejected, Beatles rejected, right? But then all of them managed to come back and continue with their journey to be successful. What they had was the inner courage, and what they probably had was also someone standing behind them and saying that, come on, you will succeed. Come on, you will succeed. So we saw a musician, with the authors. Let's go to someone else which the whole country loves, and we in Tamil Nadu love him even more. This is, Dr. Abj Abdul Kalam. Now, all of us know him as a fantastic scientist, a space scientist, who went on to become the most loved president. But in fact, he started with a colossal rejection or a colossal failure. 10th August 1979, when we sent SLV-1 into the sky, it came back in exactly 317 seconds. It didn't stay in the sky for more than 7 minutes. What happened? Now, Dr. Kalam narrates this in his own autobiography. Apparently, his boss, Professor Satish Dhawan, told Dr. Kalam that you stay out of it. And Professor Satish Dhawan went and faced the media and explained the problem, explained the disaster. Right? And Dr. Kalam was allowed to think through the problem himself without allowing his self-critic to kill him. Right? He was protected. And a year later, 18 July 1980, when SLV-2 was launched, it was a success. At this time, Professor Satish Dhawan did just the opposite. He told Dr. Kalam to go and meet the media and talk about what he did, and he stayed out of it. The lesson here is that when faced with a rejection, you need to silence your inner critic, and you may have to take some help from someone who will help you silence the inner critic, right? So we've looked at musicians, we looked at authors, we looked at scientists. Let's look at something else which is close to my heart. This is a maternity home and a child care center in Chennai. It is run by the Chennai municipality, right? And it was rated, in many reviews, it has been rated as one of the best 24-hour nursing home in the city of Chennai. Now, this is an old home, and this is actually a home which got converted into a maternity home. Now, why am I telling all this story about a home? The reason is in 1961, 16 November, this was donated to the Corporation of Madras then by my grandfather. This is where I spent my first 6 years of my childhood. And the condition was this will be run as a maternity home and a child care center. Interestingly, this is 1961, and people say that anything give to municipal authorities go down the tube. But in this case, this has continued to perform brilliantly well. So my hats off to whoever is running this and done a great job. The story is not about just this. The story is about how in 1961, after the house was got converted into a maternity home, the government at that time, Kamraj, and Dr. Vasalam was a chief minister. Kamraj was a part of the National Congress thing. They called and they told my grandfather that Prime Minister is coming into Chennai and you'll get an opportunity to meet him and garland him and give him a bouquet. And there was a meeting he was addressing in Chennai, and his motorcade was supposed to stop in front of my grandfather's business, and my grandfather was supposed to garland him. What happened was all of us were there. I was a 6-year-old kid waiting outside with my grandfather, my cousin, my uncle, my father. All of us are waiting, and this, those were the days when our leaders used to travel in these open-top cars. So Prime Minister Nehru was traveling in this white open-top car, and we thought it will stop. It didn't stop. It drove past. Can you imagine the insult? I mean, that's a huge insult, right? But I realized when I was a kid, and I saw everyone getting very angry. You know, they said, "Look, why did they not stop? They told us this will happen. It is not happening." But the one person who should have got the most angry with the whole thing was school. Was my grandfather. Now he could have got very angry, saying, "I never asked for it. You know, why are they insulting me like this?" But he said, "No, maybe there's some reason. Maybe there's some reason why are we getting hit up. Let's relax. You know, whatever happens, happens for the good." You won't believe it that we had given up, and people are saying, you know, this is not fair, etc., etc. But an hour later, a policeman comes in a motorcycle and he says, "Look, Mr. Kamraj said he's sorry that they made a mistake. Is it okay if the cavalcade on the way back stops and you know Mr. Parmesh Iyer can meet the Prime Minister and Garland?" You know, I mean, the coolest man in the room was my grandfather, and he was not ecstatic. He said, "Okay, thank you, we'll do it." And it happened. Uh, it happened. That's my grandfather garlanding um, the Prime Minister, and the hand with the bouquet is that of my father. And interestingly, what I saw in demonstration then was what psychologists say: when you get rejected, don't take it personally. Don't get upset. It is not you. You're not being rejected. Your project is being rejected. Your CV is being rejected. Maybe something, your idea is being rejected, but you're not being rejected. Similarly, here, my grandfather was not being rejected, but the idea that they'll stop was rejected. But that got corrected later, and he got an opportunity to do this. And you know, interestingly, when I start writing my book, this just came up, and I said, "Wow!" I mean, I still remember the reaction of everyone around, but except for my grandfather, who was actually not at all upset. He was okay with the whole thing, right? So all these stories are about facing rejection. Now we switch to stories about, and there are many more stories in the book, about processing rejection. How do you process rejection? So startup people, startup entrepreneurs come and make presentation, they make pitches, etc., etc. But what happens if 100 VCs reject your presentation? This is a company called Subtle Design, started by Kartik Mehta of IIT Madras and Suhani Mohan of IIT Bombay. They came together to design a machine which makes very good quality sanitary napkins. And I was one of the early mentors for them. And they put together the prototype. The prototype could make the sanitary napkin, and they started knocking on doors of VCs. VC1, VC2, VC3, VC4. And they'd say, "Okay, you make this change, come back, make this change, come back." And they kept going like this for almost 40, 50 weeks, 2 presentations a week. And not a single check was signed. How did they? So fortunately, they had some angel investors who kept funding them, and they kept going. And then Suhani was telling me this story. They came and spent 2 hours with me explaining the whole journey to me. And fortunately, she went to California for a startup meet, where one of the VC advisors met Suhani and said, "You're doing it all wrong." She said, "What do you mean?" So, "You're doing it all wrong. You're not an ordinary startup. You're an impact startup." So Suhani had never heard the term impact before. So she said, "What's an impact?" Impact is a startup which impacts society. So what you're doing is providing low-cost, high-quality sanitary napkins for underprivileged children, underprivileged girls. It's a great idea, but you need to change your entire pitch. So she managed to change the pitch deck, and she came back, and then the next 10 presentations she made to VCs, to a different set of VCs called the impact VCs, she got 4 checks signed. And so remember, when you get rejected, you may have to go put up a rejection processing system, figure out what happened, and then find a mentor to advise you, to tell you what you did right and what you did wrong. And fortunately for Suhani, she got it right. She's very successful. She came on the cover of Forbes India last year. She was also one of the finalists in the Economic Times startup awards earlier this year. So rejection, and then success. So let me talk about story from my own advertising life. This was June 1997. A big company called Hyundai was coming into India, and they wanted an advertising agency. We at FCB Ulka did not have a car account. We were desperate for the car account. So we got the brief from the client and we did some campaigns. We flew down to Chennai, presented to the Hyundai team. And we were walking out. I was talking to my colleagues and I said, this didn't go well. Two of them said, what do you mean? I mean, I think we made a good job. We'll get the account. I said, no way. I mean, we were not even the ballpark. I don't think we engaged with the audience at all. You know, this didn't go well, guys. And we kept thinking, talking about it on the way, in the flight. We came back. And then when we came back and we sat and we did what is called an after action report, I said, look, this is not working. You know, we understand nothing about cars. We understand nothing about car consumers. Cars are going to be a huge business category for ad agencies, for all marketing services companies. If we don't fix our act, we're going to fall flat once again. So we started reading, we started putting things together, and in January we discovered Tatas were thinking of launching a car. So we engaged with the Tata Motors team. We were doing a case study competition with a business school. We invited Tatas. They said, no, we can't give you any data. We said, don't want any data. We'll pull it from public domain. You just come and judge the presentation being made by the students. At the end of that, we were talking to the client there. He said, look, would you guys like to pitch for our business? I said, yeah, of course. And then he said, look, you should take it seriously because, you know, we have got big plans and we may become your biggest account. I was not very sure that, you know, Tata Motors could become biggest account because, you know, Ulka was a pretty successful agency. We had ITC, we had Amul, we had Wipro, we had Hero, we had big account. But I said, yeah. And then we put in 3 months of effort in putting together probably one of the best presentation decks we have done. 14 agencies pitched for that business. And in June 1998, we came out on top. Every agency in the country pitched, I mean, almost every agency pitched for that business. We came out on top and we won the account, which led to the launch of Indica, Indigo, Vista, Manza, and this goes on. Interesting side plot to this is the agency which won the Hyundai account actually did very good work. They got the account in 1997, but in 2005, Hyundai brought their own house agency, InOcean, into India. So they enjoyed handling the Hyundai account for about 6-7 years. But FCB Ulka, fortunately, managed to lose the Hyundai pitch and win the Tata Motors pitch. And they got the account and they continue to handle the account. The lesson here is after every rejection, learn, play back what went wrong, process the rejection, never blame the other side. We could have easily said, you know, Hyundai was very biased, they didn't like us, etc. No, that's a wrong way to handle it. The problem is with you, right? Try and understand, try and process the rejection, break it apart, process the rejection. Fortunately for us, we learned it, we managed to process it. And just as, you know, the Tata Motors team had told us, Tata Motors was probably the biggest account which the agency had for almost 10 years. So it came out after losing a pitch. The loss at Hyundai taught us what to do at Tata. So you saw facing rejection, you saw processing rejection. Now let's come to learning from rejection. Every rejection should be a lesson learned. And nowhere is this sharper and clearer than in the world of academics. In academics, and I spent time talking to the academics about this, including people in California, people in Mumbai. When you submit a paper to an academic journal or a conference, it is either accepted or it is rejected. It is always accepted or rejected by what is known as a peer review panels, which means they are professors who are told to review it without revealing the name of who's written the article, right? So, and the rule is, if you accept it, explain the reason why you accept it. If you reject it, explain the reason why you reject it and what is wrong with the paper and what can be done in order to help it get accepted. And trained academic researchers are very good at decoding this. When they get rejection, They don't collapse. They read the rejection, saying, why was it rejected? What should I do better? And as you know, someone shared this with me that 13 of his 20 papers is a much acclaimed researcher. 13 of his 20 papers were accepted the first time. Boom, send it, gets accepted. But when he sat and analyzed, he realized that 6 best of papers and best paper award winners were papers which were rejected once, twice, or thrice. And he says, look, now when I get rejected, when I get a rejection slip, actually I say, okay, that's good. Let me see what I can do better. So remember, use each rejection to get a little better, right? And I've got my last story. This is a kind of tailpiece of my interaction with Hindustan Lever or Hindustan Unilever. So when I moved from Chennai to Mumbai in 1994 to look after a sizable part of the FCB Ulka business, one of the accounts I was told to handle was Wipro's Santur. The agency had won the account in 1989, done very good work. But in 1993, the brand's advertising had kind of started faltering, and 94, the brand was in decline. The client was convinced that the campaign the idea had to change and the story had to change. The agency was convinced the idea is right, but the story needs to change. I was put in the middle. I was new to the business and I was put in the middle. And I had to therefore figure out how to work around this. And I discovered the client liked the idea or was acceptable to the idea, but hated the story. Agency loved the idea, loved the story. So I had to kind of find a via media. So we sat and brainstormed and we created a second story with the same idea. And I went and pitched it to the client and said, look, now we have idea. You also think it's okay. We believe it's very good. We have 2 stories. And one is a story which is a very simple, homely kind of story. The other is a story which we presented earlier. My request is, why don't you look at making both the ads? I don't know what happened. Maybe my chemistry worked. And the client said, yes, we are at the end of our tether. Let's make both the films. Let's test both the films and see what works. My suspicion is what you guys think is a great story is a lousy story. It's not going to work. The other story may work, but let's see. Finally, what turned out was that the story with the client had initially been averse to turned out to be a very successful story. And let me play that ad now and tell you what happened.
हाँ, ये खूबसूरत है। पहले कभी नहीं देखा इसे। Excuse me, कौन से कॉलेज में हो? कॉलेज? और मैं? मामी। इसकी त्वचा से तो उम्र का पता ही नहीं चलता। चंदन और हल्दी के गुण समाये संतूर। त्वचा कुछ और निखारे संतूर संतूर। संतूर संतूर।
This was a turning point of sorts for the brand, and the brand has continued to grow. And the lesson for me was that when you face rejection, see if you can reframe the problem. If you reframe the problem, you may come out with a new way of presenting it to the same client or the same boss. Now, the tailpiece here is that Santur continued to grow, and year before last, it overtook Lux to become the second largest soap brand in the country. Now, to give you a perspective, in 1994, Lux was probably 5 times the size of Santur. And in 2018, Lux was smaller than Santur. So somewhere, I think it was divine that Hindustan Lever didn't give me a job, and I ended up joining advertising, got to work on so many wonderful Indian brands, helped build a brand called Santur, which ended up becoming such a successful brand. And of course, Santur also was there to generate the extra revenue and the extra profit, which got into building Wipro and generating wealth for Mr. Premji, who's undoubtedly the #1 philanthropist in the country. So in some way, maybe what Hindustan Lever did turned out good for the country, right? So let me just conclude by saying that's just a a snippet of a few stories from the book. I've gone over 5 minutes over allotted time. There are 100 different people in the book, 60 plus stories. That remember to face, process, learn from every rejection. No rejection can set you back. You can always bounce back with great energy after every rejection. Remember the formula: face, process, learn. And the quote is, do not, this is Nelson Mandela saying it, not me. Do not judge me by my successes, judge me by how many times I fell down and got up back again. So thank you very much. I think I'll stop sharing now. Vinay, I'm done. So you can start your Q&A.
Thanks, Ambi. That was a very interesting presentation. I'm sure all the MMA members will agree with me that apart from writing a racy book, you're also a pretty good raconteur of stories. It was quite spellbound by your stories, even though I read many of them in the book. But I like the way you actually narrated it.
Thank you.
So Ambi, I want to ask you. I'm pretty curious. You've written earlier books as well as earlier, and even in this book. Did you actually keep a diary of your events in your life? How do you remember to the minutest detail, all the events which took part in your life so many years ago, right from your IIT days to early advertising days? And they're not contemporary events. I'm talking about events that happened 20 years ago. How do you remember them?
No, thanks, Vinay. There's no diary here. It's really what you remember. So maybe I have a memory for incidents. Some of the dates I had forgotten, so I had to kind of go back and look at old records to find out. Like, I didn't know this entire my grandfather's story, 1961. I thought it was more like 1962 or 63. I had to go back to that press clipping, which I had. So I collect a lot of stuff. I keep collecting stuff. So fortunately, I had some of those things to go back to. Otherwise, it's all the other question you asked is right. Every single story in the book is true. What I've done is I may have hidden some names in order to not to embarrass a few people, but all of them know they are there. They're okay with it, and I've taken their permission. But these are all real stories. So I had great fun putting it all together. So before I start writing a book, I have a spiral bound notebook where I start putting down stories. These are stories in two lines, and then later I kind of bucket them into various chapters and then start writing it. So I think each person has his own way of writing. You've written books, so you know the way you put it together. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So I like the fact that you go off into a conceptual plane and dip into a bit of research. You dip into talking about psychologists and and just before it gets a bit too serious, then you slip in a nice little story which pulls the reader back, and then they're able to again relate to what you're narrating. So I think that's a nice little hook you got there.
Thank you. I've tried to keep this. I've kept a 25-year-old person for this book. That's why it's and my literary agent is clear. He says don't put too much of these management jargon and all that. So I've tried to keep it as low as possible.
Yeah. I think it's fairly simply written, and I think the story is really embellished the book. So let me come to you, Nandini, and ask you about your stories. And I'm sure, like Ambi said, even in advertising, you would have faced a lot of uphill tasks, rejections and campaigns gone awry. And so top of mind, can you relate something which has happened in your career, where you faced rejection and then, as Ambi said, processed it and bounced back and came back with a stronger campaign? And so just narrate something from your life.
Sure. So first, let me just congratulate Ambi. Ambi, lovely book. Once I started reading, I couldn't keep it down. So and I was really delighted to get an autograph book from you. So congratulations. So a quick, story, if I can recollect. The current business environment in whole advertising media is really cutthroat, and Ambi spoke of saying, sometimes we actually get 2 or 3 rejections in a week. So like all, I too have faced a fair share of rejection, and these are mainly centered around, pitches won or lost. And after you lose a pitch, one keeps assessing and reevaluating what went right, what went wrong. But let me tell you a small happy story which I think made a difference to me and to the organization. And this is some time back, so it's not something that I'm revealing, which is currently maybe about 17, 18 years backstory. So FCP for a long period of time didn't focus on awards. Our entire focus was on getting the strategy right, and innovations where a solution emerged from the strategy. So the agenda, unlike today, would never be that let's do some award-winning ads. Yeah. But one fine year, through the whole strategic route with the correct method, we had come up with an innovative solution, which I thought was really award-winning. So I wanted to enter it in awards, and that too in the famous Cannes Awards. Yeah. And Cannes Awards were quite expensive to enter even now, but even then. So the bosses got into the act, and they all said that we don't think this is award-winning. But I kept pushing, and it kept getting rejected. After several attempts, I was, obviously believed in it and I wanted it done. So I said, okay, never mind. I will pay. I will go and do what has to be done. Needless to say, of course, that didn't go down well, because then they realized that, how passionate I am, how I believed in it, and how much I wanted it to be done. So then I was told that, we value you a lot. We don't believe in it, but because we value it, we are willing to fund it. So I mean, I was willing to listen to all that, and I yet sent it. Thankfully, it got recognized. It didn't win a gold, but it won. And it was the first time for the organization to be recognized at Cannes. So, the whole, the reason that I've said this incident is because it changed a lot within the organization. Suddenly, first, I mean, as a personal thing, suddenly it gave me the confidence. So that, that what I thought was something that will work, that is award-winning, what is differentiated, got recognized at the global level. I think organization viewed me with renewed eyes, because, they looked at it that maybe she can spot some award-winning stuff, which I think even benefit us today. So many creative teams which have nothing to do with me often come and bounce of ideas. So sometimes how you deal with the rejection can become a point where one pivots, and I think that's beautifully said, and many examples given by Ambi in his book. And it also makes one realize that just because somebody rejects something, it doesn't make it right, or it doesn't make it wrong. The passion counts. It also, the word rejection made us realize that, just recognizing different mindsets or different perspectives is something that you should look at, and not take everything personally, as in, like Ambi has written in the book saying you should not look at it as a personal rejection, but you should look at it as a rejection of the idea. So I think that was one big story I could add to Ambi's repertoire of many, many stories that he has.
Nandini, was this the Nerolac shade card train?
Bang on, Ambi. I'm sure you remember the story.
Yeah, I
and Ambi, now that you think, so after I read the book, I started reflecting, and it was one of the things which I thought was really pivoted and lodestar. After that, we won Media Agency of the Years, and we did a lot of award winning. But I think that was the starting point of the whole journey. So, which is why I felt that was
it was a tipping point. I totally agree. I mean, because, and when just to bring it alive, the Cannes Award competition is so competitive. Even the top agencies have a hit rate of 1 out of 8 entries. If they send 8 entries, they win 1. 8 or 10 entries, they win 1. In this case, internationally, they got blown away. And they said, you sent 1 entry? And that one? I said, yeah, because we've got a genius called Nandini who knows, which will win, right?
Just for the benefit of our readers, Nandini, what exactly was that campaign or that solution that you developed?
Oh, so no, don't worry. It will take time to say, but
Okay.
okay. So I would have loved to relate the story, but I mean, let's not. I didn't want to go off the topic. I want to hear Ambi more than I want to hear
Yeah,
myself.
the idea was the Mumbai suburban train was converted into a shade card. They actually got the Nerolac shade card, which was like 250 shades, painted on the train, and they called it the
Yes.
world's biggest shade card.
Okay.
It was an outstanding innovation.
Right, right.
A very
So I'm
difficult
sure,
one to do. Very difficult one to do.
getting railways permission and all the bureaucracy must have taken its own toll. Yeah. Yeah.
And Nandini herself went and supervised the painting, which had to be done in midnight or something like that, And the
Yeah, before
painters, some of them were fairly well inebriated, I was told.
before the train set out in the morning for the daily commute, I guess.
Yeah, and it used to look lovely, I mean, just to see the train go up and down and the kind of shade cards and the gradual, movement like you see of a shade card, from the yellows to the blues. It used to look lovely.
Actually, you must
But
have
that's the
just been
point. So often in a pitch, you find that, or in innovation, suddenly something works, and then you find that a client has similar. If he has similar things in his mind, if he has similar, his body language changes, and then suddenly the rejection doesn't look like a rejection, but he starts accepting. So these are some of the advertising stories. So please, yeah.
But that must have been pretty much of a trendsetter, because today on the metro trains, we see it's pretty common to have a fully painted train of some
Oh, yes.
brand.
So I think, so some part of the conversation at that point was, is it a differentiator? Because if you just view it from the lens that it's a painting on the train, then it's a painting on the train. But all conversations and brand building is how you use the medium and make it the message, right? And that conversation of changing it into a shade card and depicting a train like a shade card was the nuance difference. But if you view it from the point of view ki ye to train hai, and I have seen the train often enough, trains get painted, then you lose out the message that you actually want to communicate. And I think that was some part of the debate that we were having at that point of time, when it kept going up and down and it kept getting rejected, saying this is why I think it's not as hot as at least I believed it to be.
Right. So again, to draw you back to the book, and I'm sure a lot of members would be interested in reading the book now after your presentation. So you actually, I can see that you've done a lot of research. You talked to academics, you talked to bureaucrats, you dipped into a lot of papers, research papers, and so where did you actually decide to draw the line by instead of making it some kind of a book on psychology, on human psychology, and to make it a light read for, like you said, for the millennials? How did you manage to draw that fine line? Because I can see that you've drawn a fine line, because if you had gone tipped it over a little more, it become more of a book on human psychology. You're talking, there's a lot of psychology in there, but you managed to keep it finely balanced. How did you manage that?
Well, I think, first of all, I realized that, and when I started reading all these books on resilience, I must have read at least 8, 9 books on resilience, right? And I must have read a lot of articles. And I realized that some of these are too serious and too erudite. And I kept that, that girl asking me the question at that university kept popping up in my mind. So will she understand this? Where am I going to lose her? So the moment I felt I'm going to lose that audience, I, kind of change track, and I bring in another story.
Okay.
So I was very clear that I'm not going to load it, though I think it does have fairly heavy stuff. But I tried to minimize it to the maximum extent possible. I added more and more stories to bring in human element. So one very simple answer, Vinay, is I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. So beyond a point, I can't explain those things too well. So I wrote stuff which I can understand and which I felt my my target reader will understand. And there's no point in stuffing it with too much psychology, and people are going to get
There's enough of that. Huh?
pretty confused. So I kept it light that way, and kept the stories also light. There is, the other thing is a lot of psychology books are very depressing. So if you see, all my stories are positive, so it's all about bringing
Happy
you up,
stories,
so it's about kind of, and a lot of time people think, this company is so successful, they must have had luck. No company is very successful from day one. First 5 years, 10 years, companies go through a lot of problems. Same thing with managers. They go through rejection. They may put up a front that they've been successful. Like Nandini tell you, most agencies claim that we win every pitch. That's wrong.
Yeah.
That never happens. That never happens, right? So I kept it light. That way I kept it light. Yeah. Thank you.
Right. So Nandini, since you read the book, and Ambi's actually had a big chunk of writing about sports people. He's written about our iconic sportsmen like Prakash Padukone and Geet Sethi, and how they faced, or Viren Rasquina, how they faced their share of rejections before they actually made it big. And so you've been a sports person, and I'm sure on the badminton court, you've faced your share of defeats and your victories. And so, how did you bounce back as a sportsman? You're wearing a different hat now from your advertising and media hat.
So interestingly, I would say I would hesitate to use the word in sports rejection. In business, it's easy to say rejection because after rejection, the bounce back, and you can do incremental stuff. You can do redirect your, there's a lot that can happen. Sports is either you win or you lose. And unless it is a team sport, there is no gray area, right? You just know what has happened. So when I started playing, and I think that Ambi has put really interesting stories, and Kidambi and Sindhu just now, there's a lot of debate on, they've reached at the top, and they've lost a couple of matches. They, in terms of skill, they are very good, but is it a psychological thing, and are they be able to bounce back after losing a final or something? So there's a lot of debate on both Sindhu and Kidambi just now. And the stories, like you said, he written on Geet Sethi and Gagan Narang, and Andre Agassi, for example, has written a lovely book on called Open, where Andre goes down to almost below 50 ranking at a point of time, because he starts taking some bit of enhancing stuff, and then how he's bounced back, or Yuvraj's story on cancer. So there are lots and lots of stories on sports of people who are down and out and come back. But just as a personal story, I started playing for fun. I became good at it. Having said that, my behavior after losing a match would be quite analytical. Either I lost because at an overall 11, the other person was better. And if I had given it my best shot, I was okay. I was I was capable of smiling and appreciating if the other person is better. But the difference is, if I made stupid mistakes, or because of lack of control, of lack of stamina, then I would, get it in my head that now I need to better a thing, not necessarily because I wanted to win, but because I just didn't personally like the way I had handled a stroke. And frankly, I think if you're in an individual sport, you are far tougher on yourself, than you are on others, or in even a business circumstance. So if you're in a sport and you're single sport, you will work at it till you get it right. The whole try till you succeed, perfection, all that works. But if you're in a business circumstance, the method to that madness is quite different. And sports failure, as opposed to rejection, and business rejection is quite different. And I think some of that has been interestingly brought out by Ambi in the book. But so I see the two as quite different. The only thing common between them is the competitive spirit that you land up having. And that, I think, works in both ways. So whether you're in business or in sports, the competitive spirit is, live and kicking.
Right. Just for the benefit of our readers, should mention that Nandini represented Maharashtra state in badminton. So,
Many moons ago. But yes, the
Yeah.
badminton was my game. Actually, I played many games, but badminton I continued playing the longest.
That's good. I'm sure you can brought some of that resilience from your sports days into your work life, right? So, Ambi, you talked a lot about the very interesting story about bagging the pitch from Tata Motors for the Indica. And it's amazing that Ulka, I mean, I know you're no longer in Ulka, but how did you sustain that advertising and the zing for, 22 long years? How did that happen?
Well, I think Nandini is smiling, but Ulka had a crazy history. When I joined Ulka 1989, I was told by Alec Padamsi that the company will shut down. Don't join, don't join. But we are a group of 6 of us who managed to work together for a long, long, long time. And one of the things which we had a reputation for was we were not very good at winning pitches at that time. I'm talking of the period from say 1990 to 2015 or so. We're not great at winning pitches, but we were very good at hanging on to an account. So we knew how to manage an account. And the lesson was simple: be even more self-critical of what you do, right? So make sure that the client doesn't have any cause for any worry. So you should worry more about the client's business than the client himself or herself. So if you're so committed to the client, you will never lose the business, right? And so we managed to hang in there, do great work. And in my previous book, I've talked about this multiple layers of connection. And Nandini and I were talking the other day that you can hang on to a client for a long period if you have multiple pipes going into the client. So if you're only handling the creative, they may change. But if you're handling creative, you're handling digital, you're handling direct, you're handling media, they are so much more intertwined with you. 1. 2, if you're managing a big client, you cannot leave the relationship to 1 or 2 people. The relationship has to be at multiple layers, multiple levels. So which we managed to perfect, that every big client, there were at least 3 or 4 people who had networked into the client. So that's the reason why we actually managed to retain Tata Motors for so long. And obviously you got to do good work. You cannot retain a client if you don't do good work. You got to do good work. You got to have sleepless nights because the client is doing badly. You got to have the courage to go and fight with the client without being scared the client will sack you. Because if you think what is right for the brand, you should be able to go there and fight with the client. I remember that, something about pricing of Indica was such an important issue that I remember we spent 5 days, every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to Friday, every day, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., discussing the importance of pricing with the client. Pricing, nothing to do with advertising, pricing. Right? So by adding value to your client's business, you manage to retain the account and you grow the account. This is true in every business, whether advertising, chodo, management consulting, market research, even if you're supplying some commodity in a B2B business, you can be a commodity supplier or you can be a strategic partner. Right? It's up to you. It's up to you to raise the ante and play the higher game, which fortunately we managed to do that with several clients. As a result, very often in the advertising world, the story was, it's an FCB client, which pe mat jao. This account you cannot move. And it's a great reputation to have.
So I see that in the book you stayed clear of making any references or even talking about rejection in one's love life or one's life in that sense. I think you stayed clear of that, right? It's more on...
Yeah, I'm not an expert in that. That's when you need to move towards
Ambi,
the areas
tell us
of
some stories. Yeah, Ambi, that's not
Yeah.
Tell us some love life stories also.
We'll put your wife on mute.
नहीं, मेरा कुछ है नहीं. I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert at answering those questions, which is why even in the introduction I've said, look, this is about your professional life. right? I'm not an expert on advising you how to do with your rejection by your wife, or rejection by your girlfriend or boyfriend, or rejection by, by your family. I can't handle that. I don't know what to do. So I don't want to end up giving wrong advice to people. So I've stuck to profession. I've stuck to work life. And the work life could be as an author, as a journalist, as a bureaucrat, as an academician. I have covered a whole spectrum. But I've not ventured into this, and I don't know enough. So I draw the line. Like you said, where you draw the line. Udhar mein draw line. Line potache. Adhik mele in the baka, and the baka pomatam. In the baka, and the baka then odun thriyadu. So I've said no. I don't know anything. So I my haath upar kar diya, saying sorry sir, I know so much. So right or wrong, that's what I can do. I'm not an expert. So that's why I didn't go there. So sorry to disappoint you, Vinay. If you wanted some hot tips on how to manage your love life, Nandini is laughing.
A bit late in the day, anyways. So tell me, what's your next book on? I mean, you had Sponge and you had Spring, and what would be the...
Well, it's in the works. I mean, I'm going to go back into branding now. I've done this leadership and rejection and all that. I'll probably go back to branding, because I don't want to get asked questions like what you asked. How can you help me with my love life? Oh, nahi hota hai. So I'm going to go back to my branding stories. Okay, so that's what hopefully, in a year or two. I've written 10 books, so every 2 years I write a book. So I've got 2 years to go.
Great. Okay.
That's amazing, Ambi. That, that frequency and the consistency with which you've been writing is really laudable.
Thank you.
So, Group Captain, it's 7:15. You're back. And should we go to the audience questions now?
Now, Vinay, you would like to see the questions what come in the chat box. There are only 2-3 of them. Once you finish with it, then I will come to the number of questions which has come YouTube, Facebook. We have got about 960 viewers watching this program, Facebook, YouTube, and our live webinar. So we got a couple of questions. Or you want me to read the questions what has come on the YouTube first, or how do you want to go? You finish the chat box so that other people are encouraged to put some questions in.
Okay. This is Ambi, the question from Mr. K.S. Venkateshwaran. Excellent presentation. Today, millennials find it very difficult to accept rejections and tend to quit. How do you handle this group?
Well, thank you, Mr. Venkatesh. This book is meant for them. This book is actually meant for the millennials, because millennials, there are two extreme ends to millennials. One is that there are these millennials who are being pushed by their parents to keep performing more and more, and they get very, very frustrated. The other end are millennials who are being mollycoddled by their parents, saying, "Oh, beta, you're doing well, nothing is wrong with you." So I'm saying no. We got to train our young people to face rejection, and there's nothing wrong with rejection. There's nothing wrong in your startup not getting funded. There's nothing wrong in your startup going belly up. There's nothing wrong in being laid off, right? There's nothing wrong in your idea being rejected. There's nothing wrong in blowing up an interview and giving a stupid answer. There's nothing wrong. We need to bring that to the young people. And that's the reason I wrote this book, that, the millennials have to learn that rejection has to be par for course. You got to take rejection, but learn from rejection and don't make the same mistake again and again. Right. Thank you.
Right. There's a question from Sudarshan Vaidya. Well, it says to everyone, so maybe Nandini, you may want to answer this. It says, is rejection and failure the same thing, ma'am?
Ambi, you want to go? I think you've spoken in your book about it.
Well, failure is, rejection is something which someone does to you, right? Whereas failure is something little broader, right? But these are, two sides of the same coin, so to speak. Rejection leads to failure. It's always that way, right? But failure has something of a kind of a permanence to it. I like rejection because rejection is more temporary. Rejection, you can turn it around. Failure means you're gone. No, you're not a failure. You've been rejected and you can bounce back, right? So, I mean, it's really shade difference. Remember, rejection is normally meted out to you by someone else. And therefore, very often you blame the other guy. Right? Failure could be even internal, that you fail to live up to your own expectation. That's internal. Rejection is external. I hope, Nandini, you want to.
No, that's well put, Ambi. So, those are the thoughts running in my mind that, failure seems like a full stop almost, as if you can't bounce back. But rejection is obviously a ongoing process, and it's not necessarily that it's the end. You will bounce back. That's the whole idea of spring and bounce back, that you will come back when something goes awry, so to speak, or somebody doesn't identify with your ideas. So, when I spoke about saying it's a matter of figuring out the perspectives and mindset and how do we pivot to make things happen, rejection is part of all that, as opposed to failure, which says that this is the end.
Yeah. Great. So now we got a couple of questions from YouTube, and Arun, I think we got next 10 minutes. We'll try and squeeze in as many questions as possible. I mean, what he wants to know is, do you think people's ability to deal with rejections grow weaker as they grow older? Is it true?
Good question. I think some of these are very tough questions. So, I think as we, two things can happen. As we grow older, we develop a thicker skin, right? And therefore, we are able to take rejection more on our chin as we grow older. But as we grow older, our ability to learn goes down. So this is a contrasting thing, right? And when you're young, a rejection hurts you a hell of a lot. But when you're young, you're able to learn. You're able to learn very quickly, right? When you're old, rejection doesn't hurt you so much, but you don't learn enough from rejection. So there is nothing like a perfect age to face rejection, unfortunately. And whether you're young or old, you will face rejection. I mean, I was trying to write an article and get it published in Economic and Political Weekly. It's a dream, right? I sent it, rejected, right? Okay. So that got me into a new direction. I'm trying to repurpose that into something else, right? So you can be a multiple published author, but you can still face rejection. Okay? And I could have sat and blamed them and all that. I said, no, it's okay, So both young and old, we have to face rejection. That's a rule of life.
Well, here's a question from Mr. Dingra from Delhi again. Ambi, to you. Taking Nokia as an example, is reinvention the necessary skill you, an individual or a brand, should possess to avoid rejection in the long run?
Well, in fact, Mr. Dingra should check out. I wrote an article in Business Standard a month ago, where I've taken 3 or 4 brands. One of them is, of course, Cadbury's, the worm infestation story. The second story was the Indica and Indica V2. And the third was, Nestle Maggie. The same rules apply. When you're rejected, face the rejection. Don't hide. 2, process the rejection, find out what went wrong, and learn from the rejection, and then reboot. Indica did it right with Indica V2. Cadbury's did it right when they came back with the sealed pack, which avoids worm infestation. Maggie stumbled, actually. Maggie, first stage, facing the rejection, they stumbled very badly. But after that, they processed it and they learned from it, and they've come out, very strong. So the same rules apply. Face, process, learn, and reboot. Thank you.
In fact, Suresh came and spoke on MMA platform, the Maggie story. Very interesting. Here's a question again from Facebook. It addressed to, I think, Vinay as well as Narita. You both will have to answer for this. I mean, you look forward to your response. Tell me about the time when you create a unique idea or solution and it was rejected by your colleague. How were you able to bounce back? As far as Vinay is concerned, your editor says, no, it's not a good story. How were you able to convince him or leave it and move on?
Yeah, for a journalist, I think rejection is part and parcel of your profession. Whether you're trying to get an interview with somebody, it could be a bureaucrat or a corporate honcho, and you don't get it. I mean, I've faced that many times in my career. You're trying to get a meeting and it doesn't happen, and sometimes people are even rude to you and saying so that happens. And so even now at this stage, I'm probably, you call me a senior journalist or what, but even then, even now my stories, if they're not up to the mark and they need a better rounding off, I'm sure my editor will tell me to go out and get some more perspectives on this. So that can happen. I mean, you may be 20, 25 years in the profession, but you're still pretty much doing the same job. You're still interviewing people, you're writing, and you're opinionating on various things, but you're still writing, right? You're still writing for an audience, so that doesn't change. And so you can fall short somewhere. I mean, whether you're writing an edit page article or any other article, I mean, you can fall short, and the editor is well within his rights to tell you, look, you need to change this around a bit. So that happens all the time.
Nandini, you got any view on? Yes, please. Go ahead. Nandini?
So yes, in fact, after reading Ambi's book, I don't think we looked at rejection as a thought, as a process thought for a long time. And I read Ambi's book, and then I started going into thinking that what's the pattern that you as an individual you have. And I think those patterns, so everyone goes through the rejection process. I don't think there are enough stories. I don't want to take too much time. But I think the thing is that it allows you to think that is there a pattern? And if this is your pattern, how do you get out of it? So I realized, for example, that my first few days, my first 6-7 days after whatever rejection is, whether it's a pitch or whether it is an individual or whether it's something that didn't work, was the same. After those initial days, then I started realizing, depending on how passionate I was of my belief or of, that I would spring back differently. And if I believed it really hard, then I would work with the maxim of try till you succeed. Or if I felt that, okay, I mean, I see logic in what somebody else is saying, you would pivot and look for more possibilities or try finding new meanings. So I think in my mind, I look at it as, look at it as a balanced activity. You have to be positive, and it has to be filled with realism, because you can't, just because you have to pivot back doesn't mean you have to wear blinkers and do whatever it takes to come back. So yeah, that's my little bit.
Ambi, here's a question for you from one of the students from the management institution in Chennai. He says we live in uncertain times where rejection is seen in many forms: layoff, failed interviews, postponed promotion, delayed appraisals. How do you overcome the uncertain times? You also want to know, so the fear of failure, we reject ourselves even before we meet actual rejection. So how do you handle such situations?
Okay, I think it's a complex question. So let me try and unpack it a bit. Fear of failure is something all of us have, right? So we have to understand that that you have that fear of failure. Right? And I spoke about Dr. Kalam, this whole thing about the inner critic. All of us have an inner critic. Right now, my inner critic may be saying that, look, you're not going to do this talk very well. You're going to stumble, right? Your laptop is going to crash, right? Your network is going to go. The inner critic is going to. So the inner critic actually doing a good job. It's alerting. It's alerting you to the problems which you may face. So you need to listen to the inner critic and then say, hey, look, shut up. No, it's okay. I will handle it. So fear of failure is something in your hands. You can control it. You can suppress that fear of failure. Now, if it is becoming too difficult for you, then in the book I've written about what I call the rejection processing system. You got to have maybe someone whom you can go to and say, look, I pitched, last 2 jobs, both interviews didn't go well. What did I do wrong? And I'm sure there'll be a senior student or a professor who will say, okay, sit down, beta. This is what, you're doing wrong. And you need to therefore learn from what you're doing. So let's be clear, we've had a very good run for the last 10, 12 years, right? Good economic growth, good job growth, everyone has had it good. So this is like this year has been a kind of a stop sign, right? So, but those of us who are, let's say, 50 or 60 years old have seen this many times. We saw this, 1977, 79. We saw the again slowdown 1987, right? We saw it again in 97. So we, again, when the dot-com meltdown happened, we saw that, right? We saw salaries being frozen, salary cuts being implemented, people not making their incentives. We've seen that several times. But if you're probably 35 or you're 25, you've not seen it ever, right? So as Mr. Gopal Krishnan was giving a talk, and he said, look, 10 years from now, you'll think back and say, yeah, there was this pandemic and 9, 10 months, we were kind of frozen. But yeah, we're okay. We're back. We're out of it. So I'm sure that's going to happen, right? But today, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen during the placement season? All I'm saying is take it easy, right? Don't get into a head up. Overall, the growth story is still very much there. We are going to bounce back as an economy. We are going to be doing well, right? There are going to be excellent companies coming up, and I think maybe this 9 months is going to be a course correction. Certain sectors which have been neglected, right, are going to bounce back. Manufacturing is going to come back. A lot of other sectors are going to come back. So all the other big advice, which I think Dr. Ranjan Banerjee gave in one of the talks, was that, look, someone is going to ask you, what did you do in the last 9 months, right? If you say, I was sitting at home and watching YouTube videos, you're going to have a problem. Right? You're going to say, what did you do? I did this course. I got this diploma. I learned this language. I did this. Great. You got a story to tell. So what is your story to tell when the interviewer comes? You're operating from home. Was it you just about attended classes, or you also did this? I learned Japanese, or I learned Mandarin, or I learned this coding language, whatever it is, right? I learned how to make YouTube videos. I'm posting one video every 3 days. I'm interviewing. So many people. There's a youngster, from some institute in Delhi, said I'm doing 3 of them. I've done podcast with them. Right? These are all students who are studying in different business schools. Right? They have their own series of podcasts, right? And they're doing it, out of their own time. So what are you doing? What are you doing to keep your energy level up? Right?
Excellent. I think we almost come to the end. What I'll do, I'll take 2 last questions, because a lot of questions have come. I don't want to reject them because people have put in with a lot of heart. The last 2 questions, Ambi. How do you lead when things are going to get worse before you get better? And how do you lead when people don't merely reject you as a leader? How do you handle such a situation? Is one of the
so one is, you got to be clear with the troops, that you got to be honest with your people, that things are going to get worse before they get better. You cannot con your team, right? You got to tell them to tighten the belt. And Vinay will tell you, when Bhaskar took over Titan, it was Vinay has written in this book, they were in a very tight situation. So his senior management said that, look, we're not going to have any salary revisions for probably 3 years. Are you guys ready to come on? And they all said, yes, sir. We want to make it work. And they made it work. So be honest with your troops. Don't lie. And if you're getting a feeling that your team is rejecting you, you have to do a 360. You got to find, now I'm pitching, is that you need to find a business coach, a CEO coach who can help you understand what's going wrong. Because if you're honest, if you're hardworking, if you're intelligent, and you're a decent leader, why should your team reject you? What are you doing wrong? Maybe that's something which you can correct. So you need to find an external coach or a mentor to help you figure out what is going wrong, and you'll be okay. You can bounce back.
Lovely, as usual. And this one last question. What I picked up from number of questions. You can take it as a question from me, actually. What are the 3 key skills that you need to bounce back from failures? And also another thing is, what do you consider to be the most significant takeaway from your book? Why should I buy the book and read?
Okay, I think, I've said rejection is not the end of the road. I think that's one lesson. Rejection is not the end of the road. Take every rejection as an opportunity to learn and become better. But every rejection should be a lesson for you. If you don't learn from a rejection, chances are you're going to get rejected again, right? So learn from every rejection. And also, like I said, remember this: face, process, learn. Face, process, learn. That's a simple mantra for handling any rejection. So you cannot allow a rejection to put you down. You got to make sure that you have the moral courage. You have the internal, I've come back. You got to have the internal spring which can bounce back and take you, in fact, bounce forward and not just bounce back. Right. So thank you, Vijay.
Thank you, Ambi. Thank you, Ambi. Thank you, Vinay, and thank you, Nandini, for the excellent evening. I think people, the takeaway has been fantastic. At least for me, I could recollect what exactly is happening, and I know how many times I got rejected. Not only in the Air Force, while in MMA, you are a part of the committee. How many times they'll say, no, it won't work. I remember when we want to do live webcast of all our national conventions from Taj Coromandel. They said, if you do live, who will come and see? But we stuck to a thing. We continue to get 900 people attend our convention, Taj Coromandel, because you take it, people see, and people would like to come and meet when they see the television. No, more people are there. You must go and meet. Better networking, better ambience, and good food, and great thing. Thank you, Ambi. And as a token of our appreciation, that's what we present to the people. We present the mask on your behalf. When we do, our team go around to different places, hand over this mask to the people needy, because this time we need them. This is how the MMA team go around and present the mask to different people, educate them why they should wear, and we also make sure that everybody do that. And thank you. I think it's a great privilege for us to do that. And
thank you, and very, very happy Diwali to all our viewers. Thank you, Nandini. Thank you, Vinay.
Thank you, Ambi.
Thank you, Ambi. And that's a wonderful gesture, Group Captain, to give the masks.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you. Stay safe and stay healthy. Every time we tell the Diwali, play safe, stay safe. Now you don't have to worry. You have to be safe and wear your mask and stay healthy. Have a great Diwali. Thank you, Ambi. Stay safe, and thank you, Nandini, for joining us. We would like to get you back again, MMA, and one major event. I'll keep looking forward to having you over again, MMA. Thank you, Vinay, and lovely having you again with us. And we are going to catch up very soon. We are going to come to MMA soon. Okay, thanks so much, and bye-bye. Good night till we meet again. Good night. From Ambi. Thanks.